Welcome to Talking Trades. We are joined by Tim Eccles, who is the Vice Chairman of the Georgia Public Service Commission. And as always, joining me is the outgoing business manager for Georgia Construction Careers, also known as the Atlanta North Georgia Building Trades, Randy Beal. So today we're going to talk about what's going on in the state of Georgia as it relates to the future of power and labor, because that's a big topic right now, especially with the new administration. And I just want to kind of open the floor. Thank you for joining us, by the way. And I just wanted to kind of open the floor on, there's a lot of talk around, sort of re-domesticating power and the whole drill baby drill thing and, keeping coal plants, et cetera. And I just wanted to know from your perspective, kind of, if you could set the table for us as to what we're looking at in the next 2, 3, 5 years in terms of, the situation around power in the state of Georgia.
Yeah, I think the Trump administration, and good to be with you guys again, by the way, I think the Trump administration is going to give a reprieve for all things coal, at least during his 4-year term. Things could very easily turn sour for coal in another 4 years if there's a new administration that really doesn't want to keep it open. So I don't think that means we're going to build any coal plants. I don't think there's any possibility of that happening. I think what this does is it just keeps the coal plants going a little while longer. They were scheduled to close in 28. I think it keeps them open maybe to 35, possibly 40. It just depends on how harsh the regulations in the future are on the coal ash itself, the requirements about the ash, because if the requirements get to be too onerous, we don't want to make any more ash. We want to stop it. We want to get it out there. We want to get it into the cement business as a continued part of their recipe.
Tim, let me ask you a question. So when the federal government has the restrictions like on coal to clean up the air or whatever be the case, I would make a case that, as an asthma person myself, that we have a problem with pine trees. But anyway, we won't go there. But the state then has to take it up, correct? It's not just a federal. They're making regulations. The state can adhere to those, which means spending a lot of money to bring plants up to speed. But what does the state have to do if the Trump eases regulations? Then it's a state decision, correct?
Well, the state, through our EPD, our Environmental Protection Division, they are really the environmental regulators. We're the financial regulators of the power company. So if EPD says you've got to do this at your plant, then we're going to give the power company the money from ratepayers to be able to do that. So what we're seeing with the Trump administration is probably an ability for coal plants to continue operating as they're operating right now and not have to deal with any, say, carbon capture and storage. That was kind of the way that the EPA in Washington was heading. Hey, if you're going to have these coal plants, you've got to take the CO2 and you got to put it down in the ground. You've got to stick it into an aquifer. You've got to send it to southeast Georgia where the soil is porous and permeable, and you got to just stick it way down there, almost like where shale gas has been that we pull out, methane. Now we got to stick the CO2 there. And Randy, that's just way too expensive. It's going to be easier to convert the plants over to natural gas and
in the
keep coal.
future. No
in
doubt.
the future.
Yeah,
Not over the next 4 years, but in the
Right.
future.
I just wanted to know how it worked. If it came out of the administration down to here, the state still has to do its due diligence. And so when it comes to the integrated resource plan, then how has that changed what we'd already had planned?
Well, what's changed is that the data centers are coming in hot and heavy with massive loads that we have to choose if we're going to serve or not. So you've got the Georgia Power side in their territory where they're deciding, yes, we are going to serve them, and we set the rules for those data centers at the Public Service Commission. And then you've got all the EMCs, the 41 or so EMCs that are out there. They've got to set their own rules and decide if they can handle putting data centers into their territories. They're a little bit pressed now. I think you're seeing along Interstate 20 from Douglasville out to Covington, you're seeing EMCs like Greystone, like Walton EMC have a little bit of capacity, but these EMCs are being really careful about getting data centers in their territory.
And Brad, I don't know if you understand all this because I don't, so I'm going to ask some questions here. But So explain to a novice like me. So I always thought, and I still think this, Georgia Power, Southern Company, is the only people producing energy in the state of Georgia.
That's not true.
That's not true.
No, it's not true. You've got dams over there on the Savannah River.
Is that TVA? No, the
it's not
TVA would be in north.
You've got like for example, the city of Elberton. They're getting most of their power off of that dam over there.
Okay.
So that's a MEAG city. That's coming through municipal electric companies, and they've got their own sources. Yeah, they do co-own part of Vogel. They co-own part of Shearer, but they also have their own stuff.
So,
and the EMCs are building a brand new gas plant just south of Plant Shearer in Macon that Georgia Power's not getting anything off of.
So I was going to ask you, where does EMC get their energy?
Yeah, they're getting it off of some of their own units. They also co-own stuff with Georgia Power. So it's a hodgepodge.
Wow. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Yeah,
It makes me wonder what percentage of power in the state of Georgia is generated by nuclear, coal, hydroelectric, et cetera.
Yeah, we're at about 49% gas now, and that's why this Ukrainian thing had such an impact on customer bills, is because Spain, Portugal, France, they started getting their gas from the U.S., exported on big ships, liquefied, instead of buying it from Russia. So as soon as this Russian thing gets solved, the better off we are, because it will lower our gas prices and essentially lower everybody's power bill.
Huh.
And then we've got about 21% nuclear. We've got about 8% solar, renewables. We've got the rest in coal and hydro. You think about Lake Burton and all those lakes in North Georgia, basically damming up the same river as it comes south, and we're getting a lot of power off of those dams in North Georgia.
What is the goal for solar moving forward for the state?
I think we want to continue to add solar. We're expecting to add another 4 gigawatts of solar over the next 10 years. We do expect it to continue to grow, and we're going to add a bunch of batteries to that on transmission substations. So you're going to see more and more batteries. They don't necessarily generate power. They're storing the power, but they can release it really quickly, and they're really wonderful for the grid.
So when we talk about solar and power and battery storage and all that, what happens to those batteries? How long does the batteries last? I mean, I drove an EV for a while, right? So how long do they last? What do we do with batteries afterwards? And what's the environmental impact? I know we move towards all that for environmental reasons, but those things have an environmental impact as well.
Yeah, much more so than a solar panel. That solar panel is going to last 35 years, and there's really nothing coming off of that when it rains except water. They're very safe. Where batteries, they're a fire hazard. They wear out much quicker. The reprocessing or recycling of them is more difficult. So batteries are a little bit troubling. They're of benefit, but we've got to make sure that we can take care of the back end of it when they're done.
Do all solar fields have batteries?
No, not every one of them, but we're adding solar to a bunch of large solar fields, because what you do, Randy, when you add solar to batteries, before it only worked during the day when it wasn't raining, when it wasn't cloudy. Now you add all those batteries to it at the same nameplate capacity, 100 megawatts of solar, 100 megawatts of batteries. Now all of a sudden you can count on the thing. You can put it into your capacity plan. Before it was just, well, if the sun was shining, we got it. If it wasn't, we didn't.
And a minute ago, I'm sorry, Rudd. This fascinates me, but I'm just throw it in there when you jump in it for me, right? But anyway, you say 4 gigawatts of power. Well, how many homes is that approximately? What I don't even know what that means.
Yeah, so that's a couple of million. Plant Vogel with its 2 units powers about 1 million homes. The 2 new units, that's 2,200 megawatts. So if you double that,
okay,
and you've got batteries alongside that, then you're going to have it supplying 2 million homes worth of power. So that's a lot.
That is a lot.
Okay, so I did a project with the Houston Construction Council, the HoustonConstructionCareers.com. And we shot some video stuff of the nuclear plant, and we shot of this huge solar farm as far as the eye could see. And I was asking the guy at the solar plant, how many homes does this power? And he said like 183,000, let's call it. It wasn't that, but something like that, in the 100,000, and the nuclear plant was like 2 million homes. Is that just seems like such a huge disparity to me in terms of efficiency? Like nuclear is way more efficient. Is that a fair assessment, or is it
or more powerful?
Yeah,
I mean, it is. I would say it's more reliable. I mean, the solar is below the avoided cost of energy, meaning our cheapest form of energy, those solar fields are a little bit cheaper than that because we require that. And so they are economical. And when the sun's shining, they're providing the extra energy that we need. But we can't rely on them if we put the batteries with them. We've got to have batteries to make them, quote, reliable.
And I had the same question written down. I'm going to ask it a different way. How many acres of solar farm does it take to equal the energy produced by the two new nuclears?
Yeah.
Is that you may not know that
reactor,
answer.
I do know it's 6,600 acres of solar for Unit 3, another 6,600 acres for Unit 4. But remember, South Georgia's got a lot of land, a lot of it, and most of our solar's down there. And developers can lease it cheap. The farmer wouldn't be able to get that much money for it in any other way. So farmers have, not all of them, but the ones that live near substations, because you've got to be near a substation for it to really make sense, because they have to pay the connection cost to get it to the entrance ramp of the grid. The substation is the entrance ramp onto the power grid. And if you're 5 miles from that, you're too far. You need to be within a mile to be able to really make it worthwhile. So farmers have liked it. We're getting a little bit of rural backlash right now, but for the most part, it's been very good for Georgia, very good for Atlanta as well.
Do you think that when I live in Barnesville, which is about an hour
Lamar
south
County,
Lamar
yep.
County, right? And anyway, what I see is generationally, less people come along and want to be a farmer. Their parents might have been, or their grandparents. So I can see where you would have less resistance from especially those generations, right? That they're like, rather than plow the field, I'll rent the field, right?
That's right. We have a farm in Henry County, and if we weren't selling it to Horton Homes, who's buying it to build a neighborhood, then it might be attractive, to put solar there. If you can get a long-term 35-year lease for a high price, then you can keep the land and just have somebody paying you to do nothing.
How do you balance that between the agricultural needs of the state and the power needs of the state?
I don't think there's any farmer that's sitting there going, oh no, the state's counting on me to grow these watermelons. I just don't think farmers are thinking about it like that. They're not carrying the burden of agriculture on their shoulders.
They're businessmen.
I think what they're thinking about is, man, I need to make this land work for me. Do I put it in pine trees? Do I put it in row crops? Or do I put it in solar panels?
Yeah, but I mean, has there been any thought as to what the agricultural needs of the state of Georgia are and how that affects that, or we've got plenty of land and we're not worried about that?
I don't know that there's a lot of people other than the Farm Bureau and maybe the Ag Commissioner thinking about this every single day. I mean, farmers are, obviously, but oftentimes farmers are leasing their land to Big Ag. Big Ag has it, and they're growing row crops or cotton and so it becomes, how much am I going to get per acre and for how long? A lot of, as Randy said, a lot of farmers are aging out and their kids don't want to do it. Their kids have got a college degree, they're working somewhere else, right, and they don't want to farm it. So are we just going to keep it in the family with a few cows on it for nostalgia's sake, or are we going to do something with it to make money for the family?
But what interests me is a lot of things about Tim, right? But one, he's so knowledgeable, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
for sure.
Like, you've been doing this since you were 18 or what? I mean, give me a little background on Tim Eccles.
Yeah, I've been on the commission for 15 years. Before that, I built Teen Pack, a nonprofit organization. I really have invested most of my life in building young people, working with young people, much like you're doing right now, as you are working with technical colleges and other kids that are, going into the trades. So, but, when I was 49, this office opened up and I decided to run for it, and I've had it ever since. And I do love it. I have learned a lot about all this stuff. And I really liken myself as a biblical Joseph. You remember Joseph in the Bible who served the Pharaoh, and he stockpiled all the food, and it saved the Egyptians and saved the Hebrews. and I'm stockpiling electricity. I'm stockpiling gas. I'm helping Georgia get ready for the future so that we continue to be the best place to do business.
Can we talk about nuclear for a second? So Vogtle, I've heard that there's going to be a 5 and 6, and then there's not going to be a 5 and 6, and that there's a place they're looking at it in South Georgia and all that kind of stuff. Are you at will to talk about like the future of nuclear in Georgia and its importance to the state?
Yeah, so I think we have two choices. We can build one more unit at Vogtle, and I do think that does eventually happen. But I think before that happens, we probably go to Stewart County. And Kenny Mullins has talked a lot about Stewart County, and I know he's very interested in seeing us develop some reactors there. So
Stewart's down near Columbus.
2 counties below Columbus.
Okay.
Yep. So if you go to Fort Benning and just go 2 counties down, Georgia Power has 7,000 acres. They've already done
soil testing.
49 million in soil testing. It is suitable to put all that concrete in there, and it would work just fine for we've tested it for one AP1000. Now we just need to ramp up and test it for the others. Right. But I do anticipate, I'm going to say 20 years, that we'll be done with 4 reactors there, and that will be on our grid, because I really don't think we can phase out any coal until we've got the nuclear in place.
Yeah, so this, and really across all the trades, we have so many people working on data centers. It's not like there's one popping up every day, and they're so power intensive.
They're hungry.
You think about
power hungry.
AI, and I would be interested in if this statistic is true in your mind, but that every AI search is something like 17 times more resources
Oracle
than
told
just
me 1,000 recently. 1,000 times more energy for that little short burst, because that prompt, that ChatGPT prompt's going and getting 1 million sources really fast.
Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. I just want to back up to the 49 million, right? So when we say that Southern Company, Georgia Power, I always forget which one to say really, but the ratepayers funded that 49 million.
Georgia Power and Georgia Power customers actually own Stewart County, not Southern Company. Southern Company runs Southern Nuclear, which is the company, if we build the reactors, they would build it. But it's Georgia Power ratepayers that would ultimately pay for it. And frankly, Randy, I'm concerned that we don't start down that path unless we have a better deal from the federal government. I just don't think we can trust a prime contractor not to go bankrupt and leave our ratepayers in a lurch. I think we've got to have some kind of bankruptcy insurance or some kind of overrun insurance before we can start down the path.
So what does that nuclear plan mean for the labor needs in the state in terms of skilled tradespeople? That's what we're concerned about.
I think it means if we build AP1000s, that all the institutional knowledge that labor has developed through the previous 2 projects, that they bring that to bear. I think we don't want to build anything other than AP1000s because that's what we've got the experience with. So if we built another one at Plant Vogtle, a Unit 5, and then went over to the western part of the state and built 4 more of those, I think that's what makes sense. And I think that's what labor probably wants to lobby for, is just doing more of the same. And then eventually, maybe even on sites like Bowen and Shearer, maybe those are eventually converted to nuclear way down the road. I don't know that's going to happen. I don't know if there's enough of a safety zone around those 2 areas.
Probably gas, for sure.
To do it. But certainly Stewart County is primed for 4 AP1000s.
How do you plan for that? How far in the future can you feasibly plan for power needs?
Well, we've been planning for it for a long time. We bought the land decades ago.
Yeah.
And then we did the site work in 2015, I think. That was 10 years ago. We did all the site work, and now we would have to apply for the license for that site. That's going to take a couple of years. And then the commission's going to have to approve a project and then start moving dirt. So it could be 5 years before we start moving any dirt.
In the integrated resource plan, a 20-year?
It's a 20-year plan.
It's a 20-year
I think it would be the 2028. We're doing the 25 IRP now. I think it's the 28 where we would do all the official approvals for a Stewart County project.
Gotcha. Earlier you said, and I said something else about the 49 million on soil testing, and I think anybody listening to this would go, wow, $49 million. What do you do to test soil? I mean, we'll think, I go check the pH in my yard to get grass to grow, but it's more complicated. Could you explain how what goes into that?
It's a lot of deep drilling all over the site. Remember, there was enough concrete to run a sidewalk out of Vogel from Atlanta to Seattle. That's heavy.
Wow.
That is a lot of weight, and you want to make sure as you get down close to that river, and you're going to be digging down deep. You've got to make sure that all of that will handle all of that weight. So, and we're not interested in going and digging that hole right now. So the only way to deal with it is to drill at multiple locations all over that site.
So we're talking about going 200-300 feet deep and
Yes.
checking soil and making sure the rock isn't going to crush under the weight of the. Okay,
exactly. What kind of rock is it? How stable is this site? Let's go over here. How stable is this? Let's go over here. So you're looking all over the site at the best place to be able to do the project.
One of the things you said earlier, and you've always been a great supporter of labor, and I'll say the reason I believe that you are is that we can do the best job and put the product in, do it right the first time.
We tried it without labor,
and it
was failing,
and it failed. That's right. And so you've been very vocal about that. We appreciate that. But the other things that you say that I like as a voter, let's talk about a voter for a minute. I'll take my hat off for a minute. Is you talked about you want backup if we were to build more nuclears. You want some kind of federal assistance in case we have a company that goes bankrupt, that we're not left holding the bag, which means the taxpayer, the ratepayers are left on the bag. And I appreciate your stance on that, right? Because you're not only looking after working men and women who can do the best job, you're looking after every ratepayer.
Yeah, see, it's a partnership, really, between Southern Nuclear, Georgia Power, labor that's hired by Southern Nuclear to do the job, and then the ratepayers that are essentially funding this over a long period of time. And it's got to work for everybody. And so when we had Westinghouse go bankrupt and it voided our fixed and firm contract, that put ratepayers and, frankly, Georgia Power and everyone, including your workers on the plant, in a difficult situation. I mean, imagine if the gates had closed on that plant and it was sitting like South Carolina's plant is right now, with the gates closed and nothing there but a bunch of rusting material, half done. So that doesn't help anybody. And
I think I know somebody gave a speech about that one
I think
time.
you did give a speech about that at the commission. It was very inspiring as we were sitting there trying to decide, do we finish or not? And you guys came in force and said, yes, we definitely can finish. Here's what this will look like if we don't. It was the tale of two cities.
Yeah, it's a ghost town over there, right?
Yeah.
And now we're just recently we did the tale of two states. We don't want to be California. We see rolling blackouts. We see all these things. I think it's a vision, and I use some scripture verse there, right? Where there is no vision, the people fail, people fall. But it's important for you.
Perish is actually what the King James says.
That's exactly what King James says. Proverbs 29:14.
Yes.
Y'all have great vision when it comes to power. And with more businesses coming to Georgia, we have to have more energy. And I think that's important. What'd you say earlier? Our church is in Henry County, and they're building 900 homes on the corner of Mount Carmel and 4119. And we need energy for that. You just can't fire up a house without power, right? So I appreciate the vision that y'all have, and I want to say this too, Rudd. I don't know how much you watch on the Public Service Commission, but Tim, and I'm not knocking any of the others. The others are great commissioners. You're the only one I ever see on social media, and you do a great job of telling what y'all do as a whole, and what you do, and what you believe, and I think that resonates with people.
Well, I mean, it helps us look out above, out from the bow of the boat and think about the labor needs that we're going to be recruiting for,
Well, that's important. Yeah.
And I'm thinking how closely you must work with the economic development people. I mean, because unlike South Carolina, you got a dead plant there, but you guys have to work very closely to be able to provide the power infrastructure for these companies that are coming to Georgia in droves.
All this is great news for labor, because if you've got customers that want the power, and now you're building data centers and labor's involved with that, now you got to go over here and build the power plants and transmission lines and all that it takes to supply it. labor is actually getting a twofer right here, you know, from the customer itself and from the power company. So I think over the next 20 years, it's going to be a fantastic time to go into these fields.
I think it's going to be great. And we're recruiting heavily. And, you know, I've always get asked this question, Tim. It's like they'll ask us, you know, can you supply the manpower for X? Can you? There was a lot of talk about Vogel about that. And of course, we did. And I always tell people this, we haven't not done it yet, you know. So until we fail to do any project, I really don't want to be asked that question again, right? Because we've never not done it yet.
Well, kids don't know what they don't know. If they don't know there's a path for them where they could buy a house and send their kids to college, and you know, if their vision is too small and they're not really looking at all the opportunities, then well, they may miss out on that. And that's why I really like to meet with all of your folks in all the trades and learn about it and see all the different jobs that are available, and let young people know as I speak to them, hey, you don't have to go to Georgia and be an art major or a history major and struggle. You can, you know, the welders at Plant Vogel make more than they will ever make.
Sure.
You know, and try to let kids know that there's a different path.
You know, let me say this though about parents. So when I go on Friday Night Football, I tell people and speak about the trades. I'm not talking to the kids. I'm talking to the parents, because you know parents, you know, have been structured for many years to, my kids got to go to college. They got to go to college. They got to go to college. We have enough business degree people working at Starbucks where now we need to produce people that have a legitimate career that they can work in and make a lot of money. And that's the trades.
I can tell you, I went to college. My children, I have 3 boys. My wife went to college. My parents went to college. Her parents went to college, etc. My son, almost like he went into the trades, and now he owns his own company. He's 26 years old. It's not just you don't just go and work in the trades. It's just like a training, you know, that you might get from a college. You go and you learn some stuff, and then you apply it, and then you move up, just like any other thing. You have to be able to, you know, apply yourself and learn that. And the future is in stuff like this. It's not in the art major stuff.
I was raised, you know, on the south side of Atlanta, and my family had a car auction. I mean, I ran a car detail shop. I mean, I worked outside. We had a farm. I mean, you know, my granddad taught me the value of hard work. And yeah, sure, I've got a couple of college degrees now, and I'm not out there necessarily doing that work now, but I grew up with an appreciation for it. I did it. I know the value of it. And it gives you, you know, a real sense of what it takes to make the state turn.
Well, my point was that because I work in the trades and represent lots of different local unions, you know, in the construction trades, it was okay for him to do it. But a lot of parents think, oh gosh, you know what I mean? Like they almost like need permission.
A second class citizen.
Right.
We can't be doing that. I mean, we can't have a prosperous state if nobody's building anything. I mean, this is a critical part of making everything work in Georgia.
Well, I tell people I got my degree from SMU, Sheet Metal University, and so I mean, you know, and look, I went to school 5 years for it, so you know, it is what it is. But no, we offer and we have great trades. There's no doubt, and great opportunities to work. I want to say something that I brought to you several years ago, and I'm not going to say because I brought it to you, and I don't know what you said behind the scenes or what input you had, but several years ago, I brought to you an issue, and I said, if we're the best, and Southern Company and Georgia Power recognizes we're the best, the commission recognizes we're the best. We came in and I'm gonna say saved Vogel, right? Why wasn't we doing any work at Shear? And you said, I don't know, but I'm gonna find out. Because you're right. You know, why aren't you doing any work there? And I know it was a complicated issue. There's multiple owners there. It's not just Southern Company, Georgia Power. It's 5 or 4 EMCs or whoever, right? But whatever part, you don't have to say you had anything to do with it, or maybe you did. Maybe you asked questions. But today, Rut, we have a maintenance agreement now with Plant Shear. And it's something that I have been preaching about since 2017 when I came in here. And I'm just happy that happened. And if you played any part, thank you. If you didn't, thank you, because I know you did something. I know you asked questions. But they made the ultimate decision to finally go to labor, and now we're doing maintenance work.
Most people have no idea all of the things that they enjoy on a daily basis that the building trades union guys built in this town, like in ostensibly a red state. I guess we're a purple state now, but you know what I mean? I mean, Truist Park and the Dome and all the nuclear facilities.
How
and
about
all
every
the data
hospital?
centers, every hospital,
Yeah.
et cetera. So
well, look, labor needs friends, and labor has a friend in me on the commission. And
No question.
I did ask those questions about Shearer. I did push for us at Plant Yates to be able to use union labor out there, and it is important, I think, for labor to continue coming to the commission with guys like you and Kenny and others, and letting yourself be heard from and meeting commissioners. And you guys do that. I come to you and say, hey, we need you here for this moment, and you come. But I think there's some great partnership going on here, and I want to keep it going. And I hope, by God's grace, I hope I get reelected on June 17th.
I was going to ask you, so what is on tap for Tim Echols here in the next couple of months?
Yeah,
Tell us what's going on.
So on June 17th, I have a gentleman from Augusta running against me. I'm taking it seriously. I wasn't counting on having a Republican challenge me, but I'm going to take it seriously. I'm probably going to spend $100,000 to protect myself in the primary, but then I'll have a Democratic opponent as well in November. So I've got 2 elections. So if Tim Echols is going to continue to serve, I'm going to need my friends in labor to make sure that they go out and vote on June 17th, but especially on November 4th on that general election if I'm successful.
So that is a statewide vote.
That is a statewide vote at all 159 counties.
So our message to labor, and let's mark this in there so we can find it real easy, is we have a friend in Tim Echols. He's always been a friend. And we have other friends at the commission. But Tim, anytime we've asked Tim to be somewhere, Tim's there. And aside from that, I said the social media presence. What I like as a ratepayer is if I want to find out anything about power, I can kind of just Google YouTube and this dude pops up, right? And there's value to that because sometimes we don't know what our elected officials do. We just hear about them when they make a decision. I hear about why he makes a decision, and I appreciate that.
Thank you for that.
The ratepayers should care about that. So we're behind you 100%. We're going to tell our people to get out and vote. For those that care about these things, he is a Republican, and that means labor is supporting a Republican. I like to say that because sometimes we get labeled as we only support Democrats. I want to say that, again, I've said this before in a podcast with Rutt, that we support people that support labor.
that's right.
Period. I don't care what party you are. I care about what you do with labor. And you do more than that because you care about the ratepayer as well. So thanks for everything you've done. We got an election on June
17th.
June 17th.
And then November 4th after that, were I to win on June 17th.
Is there any early voting?
There's early voting starting May 27th. There's going to be no line. There's going to be nothing on the ballot but me and my opponent. You're going to go in there and you're going to the Democrats do have a primary, and I know if you normally vote Democrat, you might think, do I take the Republican ballot? Yes, you do. You take it to help me. But if for some reason you feel like you can't, go ahead and vote in your Democratic primary. But then in November, make sure you select me.
So they can't vote in both, obviously.
Can't vote in both.
So let me say this to our friends. We want to pick up the Republican ballot. We want to check Tim Echols. That's the bottom line. And and that's what, even if you're a long, loyal Democrat, forget that this election. Let's go with Tim Echols all the way.
We really appreciate you coming in and talking about the future of energy in Georgia. It's important. It's important to our people, and it's important to our recruiting efforts. And we're really grateful for your support of labor.
Find out more at timechols.com.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us on Talking Trades, and we're out.